Wolverine, also known as Logan, is a beloved character in Marvel Comics, famed for his regenerative healing factor, adamantium-laced skeleton, retractable claws, and heightened senses. Despite these formidable abilities, Wolverine isn't typically classified as an Omega-level mutant. Omega-level mutants are those with the highest tier of abilities, often capable of impacting the entire world or even the universe. While Wolverine's powers are impressive, they don't usually reach the cosmic or reality-bending levels associated with Omega-level classification. Unlike mutants like Jean Grey, Franklin Richards, or Iceman, who possess abilities like reality manipulation, energy control, or telepathy on a scale that can reshape existence, Wolverine's powers are more grounded and focused on combat prowess and survival.
These are the three most powerful X-Men to walk the Earth. Vulcan comes in third, with the ability to absorb any type of energy from even the strongest Omega-level characters, and creation of nearly unbreakable force fields. Vulcan could shrug of punches from Hulk and endure Black Bolt's strongest screams, and his ability to siphon energy and steal the powers of any character classifies him as beyond Omega. At second, Mr. M, Absalon Mercator can manipulate matter at an atomic level with abilities like Krakoan Resurrection, turning off his enemy's abilities and reality warping to nearly omnipotence. He has made himself intangible, resurrected from death, and altered an entire storyline. With the ability to create anything from his imagination and manipulate conception, the schizophrenic king of Otherworld, Jamie Braddock can create and destroy universes with a thought.
Meet Magik, aka Illyana Rasputin, the X-Men's teleporting sorceress. Kidnapped by a demon lord as a child, she became the ruler of a hell dimension called Limbo, mastering its dark magic. She can teleport across dimensions with her stepping discs, making her a crucial asset to the X-Men. Magik wields the Soul Sword, a weapon she created that can cut through any spell or magical being. Her combat skills are top-notch, whether she's facing demons or other powerful adversaries. She overthrew the demon Belasco to become the Queen of Limbo and led the charge against a demonic invasion during the Inferno event. She's also taken on Elder Gods and teamed up with Dr. Strange, proving her prowess in the mystical arts. Despite her dark past, she's a dedicated leader of the New Mutants and a loyal member of the X-Men, always ready to protect her friends and family. From battling in demonic dimensions to mentoring young mutants, Magik shows she's not just any mutant. She's got magic, might, and one powerful sword. Stay tuned for more mutant madness.
All right, we all love the X-Men for their stories, their powers, and the big world-saving moments. But let's be real for a second. They're also ridiculously good-looking. I mean, the X-Men lineup over the years has been basically a superhero fashion show mixed with a romance novel. So today I'm giving you my personal, totally subjective, 100% biased list of the hottest X-Men of all time. You can agree, you can disagree, you can yell at me in the comments. It's all good. This is just one mutant fan's opinion. Let's start with the Cajun king of charm himself, Gambit, Remy LeBeau. The man could probably flirt with a lamppost and somehow get its number. Between that messy brown hair, those glowing red eyes, and that trench coat that's basically become his signature, Gambit oozes cool. And I'm gonna be honest, the accent is doing at least 50% of the work here. That smooth New Orleans drawl just sounds like trouble. The kind of trouble you'd willingly get into. Plus, he's got that whole bad boy with a good heart thing going on. He might steal your wallet, but he'll also steal your heart. And somehow you'll thank him for it. Number 4 is Betsy Braddock, aka Psylocke. Now, Psylocke's whole story is complicated, but one thing's always been clear. She's drop-dead gorgeous. After her whole body swap ninja assassin saga, she came back with purple hair, insane fighting skills, and a psychic blade that looks like the coolest cosplay prop ever. But it's not just about looks. Psylocke has this mysterious, dangerous energy. She's not the kind of person you meet at a coffee shop. She's the kind of person who appears in the shadows, saves your life, and then vanishes without telling you her name. I don't know if she'd kiss you or stab you, but either way, it'd be memorable. Okay. Number 3 is Aurora Monroe, Storm. And listen, Storm isn't just hot. She's majestic. She walks into a room and you just know she's in charge. That white hair, the cape, the lightning. She's literally a goddess in the comics, and honestly, I believe it. She's elegant but fierce, regal but deadly. And the confidence? Through the roof. Storm's the type who could ask you to do something and you'd just do it. No questions asked. Because when she looks at you, it feels like she's looking into your soul. I don't just think she's one of the hottest X-Men, I think she's one of the hottest characters in all of Marvel. Number 2 might surprise some people, but hear me out. Wolverine. Yeah, Logan's not the classic pretty boy. He's short, scruffy, and probably smells faintly like cigars and Canadian pine trees, but that's part of the appeal. Wolverine is rugged. He's intense. He's the guy who shows up at your door in the middle of the night because he heard you were in trouble, and then takes down 10 guys without breaking a sweat. And yeah, he broods. A lot. But it's that quiet, haunted energy that gets you. He's got stories, he's got scars, and he's got those eyes that say, I've seen some things. He's not everyone's type. But for me, yeah, Logan's up there, and at number 1, Jean Grey. Look, I know this might be predictable, but Jean's been the X-Men heartthrob since day 1. She's beautiful, she's kind, she's powerful, and sometimes she's terrifying, but in a really hot, cosmic goddess kind of way. From her early days as Marvel Girl to the fiery Phoenix saga, Jean's always had this mix of warmth and danger. She's the person everyone seems to fall in love with. Cyclops, Wolverine. Heck, even half the villains can't help themselves. And yeah, I'll admit it, a big part of the appeal is that Phoenix costume. That's just iconic. So there you have it, my totally subjective, completely biased, top 5 hottest X-Men of all time. I'm sure I've missed some of your favorites. I already know someone's gonna say, where's Rogue? Or, what about Colossus? And that's fair. The truth is, the X-Men roster is stacked with beautiful people, and honestly, you could make 5 different lists and they'd all be valid. But this is mine. And now I want to hear yours. Drop your list in the comments, and let's keep the mutant thirst going. If you had fun with this, hit that like button, subscribe for more comic book talk, and remember, in the X-Men universe, being hot is just another mutation.
What if I told you one of Marvel's most beloved heroes was never meant to be more than a one-off side character? That's right. Wolverine, the fierce, clawed mutant we all know and love, almost faded into comic book obscurity. But fate had other plans. From shadowy origins to leading the X-Men and headlining Hollywood blockbusters, Wolverine's journey is a wild ride through rage, redemption, and raw power. This is the untold, thrilling history of Wolverine, your favorite mutant story like you've never heard it. The origins, birth of the beast, comic book debut. Wolverine made his first official appearance in The Incredible Hulk number 180 in 1974, with a full introduction in issue number 181. Created by writer Len Wein, artist John Romita Sr., and illustrator Herb Trimpe, Wolverine was envisioned as a short-tempered Canadian mutant with claws and animal-like instincts. Originally, the claws were thought to be part of his gloves, not an actual extension of his body. This early version was feral, but not yet layered with the emotional depth and moral conflict that fans would later love. He was designed to be a match for the Hulk, a foe with unrelenting strength who would need someone just as wild to take him down. The name is Logan, Weapon X, and the backstory begins. One of the most intriguing aspects of Wolverine was his mysterious past. Readers didn't know much about him for years. It wasn't until 1991's Wolverine series and the earlier Weapon X arc in Marvel Comics Presents, 1989 to 1990, that his origin started to unfold. The Weapon X program revealed how Wolverine was abducted and experimented on, having his skeleton laced with the indestructible metal adamantium. This procedure turned him into a living weapon, one that could heal from nearly any wound and had retractable metal claws. But Logan, his true name, wasn't just a science project. His memories were fragmented, erased, or implanted. This kept his humanity and his rage on a knife's edge. It added a new dimension to his character. He wasn't just dangerous because of what he could do, he was dangerous because he was broken, and he didn't even know how or why. The X-Men era, from outcast to leader. In 1975, Wolverine found a permanent place in Marvel's universe when he joined giant-size X-Men #1, a revamped version of the team led by writer Chris Claremont and artist Dave Cockrum. This new lineup included Storm, Colossus, Nightcrawler, and of course, Wolverine. He was the anti-hero, often clashing with team leader Cyclops and operating outside traditional moral lines. He brought edge and complexity to the group, giving fans a reason to root for someone who was as likely to threaten a teammate as he was to save them. Through the late 70s and early 80s, Wolverine evolved into a central figure. His solo title began in 1982, written by Claremont and illustrated by Frank Miller, where he ventured to Japan and showed fans a new side: honor-bound, romantic, and spiritual. The Japan storyline introduced key elements that would later resurface in films: his connection to samurai culture, his lover Mariko, and his internal struggle between man and beast. The mutant with many masks, identity, and inner conflict. What makes Wolverine so compelling is not just the violence, though he delivers that in full, but the constant identity battle. Is he James Howlett, the sickly child born in the 1800s to a wealthy family, as revealed in the 2001 Origin series? Or is he the Weapon X experiment, the killer, the hero? Throughout various comic runs, Wolverine has wrestled with different identities. Sometimes he's a loner, sometimes he's a mentor, as seen in X-Men, Evolution, and Wolverine and the X-Men. He's been a soldier, a samurai, a spy, a teacher. His character embodies trauma and healing, rage and redemption. He is, in many ways, Marvel's walking contradiction. Enemies, friends, and complicated relationships. Wolverine's relationships are as brutal and twisted as his past. His most iconic feud is with Sabretooth, another product of Weapon X, who mirrors Logan's violent tendencies but lacks his conscience. Their battles have become legendary, often deeply personal. On the other hand, Wolverine has close bonds with many in the Marvel Universe. His paternal, sometimes brotherly relationship with Rogue, Kitty Pryde, and Jubilee reflects his softer side. His romantic entanglements, especially with Jean Grey, complicate his dynamic within the X-Men, particularly with Cyclops. His love for Jean is eternal, even though it's mostly unfulfilled. Perhaps most notably, Wolverine mentors younger mutants, providing a rare glimpse of his protective instincts. Whether it's teaching at Xavier's school or defending young mutants from danger, Logan's rough exterior conceals a deep compassion that shines through when it matters most. Wolverine in the broader Marvel Universe. While he is deeply connected to the X-Men, Wolverine has crossed paths with almost every major Marvel character. He's been an Avenger, fought alongside Captain America in World War II flashbacks, and has clashed with Spider-Man, Deadpool, and even the Punisher. His inclusion in Marvel Civil War, Secret Invasion, and other major arcs cements his status as a pillar of the Marvel Universe. He's also been featured in alternate universes, like Old Man Logan, a post-apocalyptic version of the character that became wildly popular. In this timeline, an older, weary Logan navigates a wasteland ruled by villains, a story so impactful that it partially inspired Hugh Jackman's final Wolverine film, Logan. Wolverine on screen, Hugh Jackman, and the cinematic legend. No discussion of Wolverine is complete without the cinematic portrayal by Hugh Jackman. First appearing in X-Men 2000, Jackman brought Logan to life with an unmatched blend of fury, grit, and charisma. At 6 feet 3 inches, Jackman was initially criticized for being too tall for the role. Wolverine is 5 feet 3 inches in the comics, but he silenced critics with his powerful performance. Over the span of 17 years and 9 mainline appearances, Jackman's Wolverine became synonymous with the character. His emotional arc in Logan, 2017, served as a poetic, devastating farewell, exploring themes of aging, regret, legacy, and love. The film received critical acclaim and was even nominated for an Academy Award for Best Adapted Screenplay. Wolverine also appeared in spin-offs like The Wolverine, 2013, exploring his time in Japan, and X-Men Origins, Wolverine, 2009, which attempted to uncover his early life, though the latter was met with mixed reactions, particularly for its portrayal of Deadpool. Wolverine's death and return. Yes, Wolverine has died, at least in the comics. In 2014, Marvel released Death of Wolverine, where Logan loses his healing factor and sacrifices himself to take down the Weapon X program once and for all. He is encased in adamantium in a haunting finale. But as with most comic book deaths, he didn't stay dead. In 2018, the return of Wolverine brought Logan back to the Marvel Universe, though he initially struggled with memory loss and the consequences of his rebirth. This return highlighted a core theme of Wolverine's character: resilience. No matter how many times he falls, he finds a way to rise. Scarred, yes, but not defeated. From a cameo in a Hulk comic to the face of one of Marvel's most iconic franchises, Wolverine's journey is as complex as it is inspiring. He's been a soldier, a loner, a killer, a teacher, a lover, and a friend. He's died, come back, and left a legacy that spans generations of fans. And even now, with Marvel Studios set to reintroduce the X-Men into the MCU, the question isn't if Wolverine will return, but when. If you enjoyed diving into Wolverine's legendary story, don't forget to like this video, subscribe for more Marvel deep dives, and drop a comment below with your favorite Wolverine moment. We've got tons more superhero history coming your way, so hit that bell and stay tuned.
Welcome, Marvel fans. Today, we're uncovering the fascinating mystery of why Wolverine is immune to telepathy. Let's dive into the reasons behind Wolverine's mental resistance and how it impacts his adventures in the Marvel Universe. Telepathy is a powerful ability in the Marvel Universe. Characters like Professor X, Jean Grey, and Emma Frost can read minds, control thoughts, and project illusions. But when it comes to Wolverine, these abilities often fall short. So, what makes Wolverine so special? Let's find out. One key reason for Wolverine's telepathic immunity is his incredible healing factor. This ability not only heals his physical wounds, but also protects his mind from external manipulation. When a telepath tries to invade Wolverine's mind, his healing factor works overtime to repair any damage and block the intrusion, making it extremely difficult for telepaths to maintain control over him. Another factor is Wolverine's adamantium skeleton. While it might seem unrelated, the adamantium coating on his skull provides an additional layer of protection against telepathic attacks. This metal barrier, combined with his healing factor, creates a formidable defense against mental intrusions. Wolverine has also undergone extensive mental conditioning and training. His time with the Weapon X program and his experiences with various teams like the X-Men and Alpha Flight have taught him how to fortify his mind against psychic attacks. This training helps him resist telepathic control and maintain his mental autonomy in the face of powerful telepaths. In conclusion, Wolverine's immunity to telepathy is a combination of his healing factor, adamantium skeleton, and mental conditioning. This unique combination makes him one of the most resilient characters in the Marvel Universe. What do you think? Are there other factors contributing to Wolverine's telepathic resistance? Share your thoughts and theories in the comments below. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon for more deep dives into your favorite superheroes. Thanks for watching. Until next time, keep exploring the Marvel Universe.
He's been called a villain, a freedom fighter, a terrorist, and a hero. But Magneto, the master of magnetism, is far more than just the X-Men's archenemy. Behind the helmet and the cold stare lies a man shaped by war, trauma, betrayal, and a relentless will to protect his kind. From his horrifying childhood in a Nazi concentration camp to his rise as one of the most feared mutants on Earth, Magneto's journey is one of the most emotionally rich and politically charged sagas in comic book history. In this video, we're breaking down the entire timeline of Magneto, from his early years and first appearances to his most shocking story arcs and recent developments in the Krakoa era. Hit that like button, subscribe for more in-depth comics history, and comment below. Do you think Magneto was ever truly wrong? The origins, from Max Eisenhardt to Eric Lenscher. Magneto's story begins not with mutant powers, but with unimaginable trauma. Born as Max Eisenhardt, a Jewish boy in Germany during the rise of the Nazis, he witnessed the murder of his family and was imprisoned in Auschwitz. In later comics, particularly the critically acclaimed Magneto Testament miniseries, we learned that his powers began to manifest in small ways during this time, bending metal under stress, surviving impossible odds. After escaping the concentration camp, he assumed a new identity: Eric Lenscher. This foundation is critical to understanding Magneto. He isn't just a supervillain, he's a Holocaust survivor, forever haunted by the world's apathy toward his people. And that memory would drive his future mission, ensuring mutants would never suffer the same fate. First appearance and early goals. Magneto first appeared in X-Men #1 in 1963, created by Stan Lee and Jack Kirby. From the start, he was a militant contrast to Professor X's dream of peaceful coexistence. While Xavier preached integration, Magneto demanded dominance. He believed mutants were the next step in evolution, Homo superior, and that humans would inevitably turn against them. His earliest plots were classic Silver Age villainy, attacking military bases, building mutant armies, and trying to seize power. But even then, there was something different about him. Magneto didn't want chaos for its own sake. He wanted protection, control, and justice. He formed the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants with characters like Toad, Mastermind, Quicksilver, and Scarlet Witch, who, twist alert, were later revealed to be his children. The Brotherhood and Fatherhood. One of the most fascinating layers of Magneto's character is his role as a father. In early comics, Quicksilver and Scarlet Witch were reluctant villains under his command, but later retcons revealed they were actually his biological children, something Magneto discovered long after manipulating them for his own agenda. This revelation added guilt, complexity, and a sense of legacy to his character. Over time, this theme of fatherhood deepened. He would go on to have other children, including the powerful and unstable Polaris, Lorna Dane. His relationships with them were always fractured. Magneto constantly teetered between duty to the mutant cause and his personal failures as a father. And while he often tried to control them, he also felt the weight of being abandoned himself, perpetuating a cycle of pain and distance. The shift: anti-hero or anti-villain. By the 1980s, Magneto was no longer just a straight-up villain. Writers like Chris Claremont began exploring his backstory in deeper, more nuanced ways. In the Uncanny X-Men run, Magneto eventually takes over leadership of Xavier's school after Charles is injured. Yes, you read that right. Magneto, once the biggest threat to the X-Men, becomes headmaster of the Xavier Institute and even mentors young mutants like the New Mutants. This shift was groundbreaking. He began working with the X-Men more often, reflecting on his past and questioning his methods. But even in his most heroic moments, Magneto never fully abandoned his belief that humanity would never accept mutants, and that mutants needed to be ready to fight. He wasn't trying to destroy the world, he was trying to save it on his terms. Genosha, genocide, and power. Magneto's most powerful and tragic arc came in the 1990s and early 2000s with his association with Genosha, a fictional mutant nation. Originally introduced as a metaphor for apartheid, Genosha evolved into a safe haven for mutants. Magneto eventually took over leadership of the island, declaring it a mutant homeland. For a moment, it looked like Magneto had everything he ever wanted. But tragedy struck in Grant Morrison's New X-Men when Sentinels, giant mutant hunting robots, obliterated the island, killing 16 million mutants. Yes, 16 million. It was one of the deadliest events in comic book history. Magneto's grief and fury were volcanic. He faked his death, returned under an alias as Zorn, and led a violent uprising in New York, culminating in the death of Jean Grey. Or so it seemed. In reality, the Zorn identity was later retconned, and Magneto's involvement in the arc was explained away as manipulation. But the damage to his character and public image was done. He was feared, hated, and shattered. House of M and the Scarlet Witch. One of the most reality-warping storylines in Marvel history is House of M, and Magneto is at the heart of it. After the Scarlet Witch suffers a mental breakdown and alters reality, she creates a world where Magneto's dream has come true. Mutants rule, and Magneto is a king. But the dream collapses when she famously utters the words, "No more mutants," decimating the mutant population from millions to just a few hundred. Magneto loses his kingdom, his daughter, and most of his power. This arc is especially devastating because it shows what Magneto truly wants, a world where mutants are safe, even if it's not real. And when it all collapses, he's left more broken than ever. The House of M was his paradise, but it was built on his daughter's madness and dissolved by her despair. Utopia and the quiet redemption. In the years following House of M, Magneto continued to oscillate between antagonist and ally. During the Utopia storyline, Cyclops forms a mutant sanctuary on an island near San Francisco, and Magneto, unexpectedly, joins him. For the first time, Magneto kneels. He literally bows before Cyclops, acknowledging him as a better leader for the mutant cause. It's a shocking moment. For decades, Magneto had demanded obedience, loyalty, and fear. But here, he surrenders his ego for the sake of mutant survival. During this time, he fights alongside the X-Men, helps rebuild mutant society, and even repairs his relationship with some of the younger mutants. For once, Magneto wasn't leading through fear. He was supporting through action. The Krakoa era, council, and conflict. In 2008, Jonathan Hickman's House of X, Powers of X, rebooted the X-Men universe, introducing the mutant nation of Krakoa. Magneto becomes a founding member of the Quiet Council, the ruling government of this new sovereign mutant state. He wears white, symbolizing rebirth and peace, but he's not softened. Magneto remains fierce, proud, and uncompromising. In this new era, he isn't a villain or an outsider, he's a statesman. He helps establish mutant diplomacy, intimidates world leaders at the UN, and still believes in mutant superiority, but now with grace and poise. His partnership with Professor X is closer than ever, though there's always tension simmering beneath. Magneto doesn't trust easily, and Krakoa's secrets and moral compromises constantly test his loyalty. Still, he remains a cornerstone of mutant progress, defending the nation with unmatched power. Trial of Magneto and Death? In one of the most recent storylines, The Trial of Magneto, Wanda Maximoff is murdered, and Magneto is the prime suspect. The twist? He didn't kill her, but the emotional weight of their history, their fractured family, and his violent past makes him the perfect scapegoat. This trial forces mutants and humans alike to ask, can Magneto ever be fully redeemed? In the aftermath, Wanda is resurrected, and Magneto fades into the background, only to resurface in X-Men, Red on Mars. In a shocking turn, Magneto sacrifices himself to protect mutant kind during the battle for Arakko. His heart is literally torn out, but he fights on. It's a brutal, poetic end to one of Marvel's most powerful characters, though in comics, no death is ever truly final. Legacy and impact. Magneto is more than a character. He's a mirror, a reflection of real-world trauma, resistance, and political extremism. He represents every group that's been hunted, feared, or misunderstood. Inspired by Malcolm X and the trauma of genocide, Magneto is proof that comic books can tackle serious themes with emotional depth. He challenges readers to think, when does resistance become terrorism? When does peace become weakness? And if the world is built to hate you, is survival alone enough? Or must you conquer it? Across thousands of pages, Magneto has been a villain, an ally, a teacher, a father, a killer, and a martyr. But he's always been honest. He doesn't hide behind ideals. He acts, and that's what makes him one of the greatest characters in comic book history. Magneto in pop culture and beyond. Magneto's influence didn't stay inside comic book pages. He became a pop culture icon, thanks in part to unforgettable performances by Ian McKellen and Michael Fassbender in the X-Men films. McKellen gave Magneto a sense of weary nobility, while Fassbender showed the raw rage of a man still carrying fresh scars. Both helped redefine the character for a global audience, turning him into a tragic anti-hero who resonated with millions, even those who had never touched a comic. Outside of film, Magneto's legacy bleeds into music, political discussions, cosplay communities, and philosophical debates. His ideology, peace through strength, is dissected in college lectures. His lines have become memes. His helmet is instantly recognizable. And yet his most lasting impact is emotional. Because Magneto isn't just a superpowered mutant, he's a symbol of what happens when society fails its people. Every time a new generation faces injustice, Magneto's story feels urgent again. Every time the world feels divided, his warnings echo louder. He may bend metal, but what truly makes Magneto unforgettable is how deeply he bends the rules of morality and makes us question where we'd stand if the world hated us for simply being born. Magneto's history isn't just about metal, it's about memory, pain, and power. He's the kind of character who can destroy a city with a gesture, but whose most compelling battles happen inside his own mind. Whether you see him as a villain or a visionary, one thing's clear: Magneto changed the face of comics forever. If this story moved you, shocked you, or taught you something new, hit that like button, subscribe, and let us know in the comments. Is Magneto right more often than we want to admit? Until next time, remember, sometimes the line between hero and villain is drawn in iron.
Of the dozens of Marvel comic characters who can claim membership in the X-Men, there are very few who possess the sheer power that Aurora Monroe commands as Storm. She wields absolute power over the weather itself, with the ability to do everything from targeting pinpoint lightning strikes, to creating full-on hurricanes, to just making sure that it's sunny with a light breeze on Jean Grey's wedding day. But while most mutant stories begin when their mutant powers manifest, and hit their high point when they join up with Charles Xavier's slightly culty team of feared and hated heroes, Storm has the kind of life that even Wolverine would think is pretty complicated. From her childhood journey as a street urchin to becoming a superhero and street fighter to the times, yeah, more than once that she's become a god, here's the entire backstory of Storm, one of Marvel's greatest characters. Let's start the story with her parents. Like many of us, Aurora Monroe's story begins with her parents. Her father was David Monroe, a photojournalist from New York City, whose job took him all over the world. That's a nice, normal career, especially by the standards of a universe where the most notable journalist has radioactive spider powers and spends most of his time fighting a man with robot tentacles stuck to his back. Aurora's mother, on the other hand, had a far more interesting past. In X-Men number 102, Ndade Monroe was referred to as an African princess, with all the specificity about her culture that you'd expect from a comic book published in 1976, which is to say, none. Years later, we get a few more details. It would eventually be revealed that Ndade and Aurora were descendants of a priestess named Aisha, who wielded magic so powerful that she was thought to be the ancient world sorceress supreme, her heirs equivalent of today's Doctor Strange. While Aurora's powers were definitely the result of the X gene, that mystical heritage would shape both how she was perceived by those around her and how she was able to draw power from them in her later years. Ndade would meet David while she was in America, and the two would fall in love and be married before giving birth to their first and only daughter. Eventually, having grown tired of dealing with the racism and the tension that was only being exacerbated by the emergence of mutants, Ndade would encourage David to take a job covering a conflict in Egypt, and they would move to Cairo with their 6-year-old daughter in tow. Sadly, that's where tragedy would strike. X-Men number 102 pinned Storm's origin story to the real-life Suez Crisis in 1956. At the time, that made perfect sense, making Aurora a 25-year-old superheroine, but here we are, 45 years later, and she's maybe in her early 30s? That's a pretty clear example of how tying origin stories to real-world events can get confusing if your characters are successful enough to stick around for a while. But really the details of the conflict around them aren't that important. All that really matters is that the Monroe family went to Cairo so that David could cover a military conflict that came too close to home. Like, way too close. Explosively close. When Storm was only 6 years old, a fighter jet was shot down over Cairo, and in the kind of bad luck that seems to plague Marvel's merry mutants, it crashed directly into the Monroe's home. The disaster killed both David and Ndade, and while Aurora survived, she was left buried underneath the rubble. When she awoke from being knocked out, she realized that she'd been buried alive with her parents' dead bodies, passing out again before waking up to dig herself out, a torturous process that took 3 days. As you might expect, this was an incredibly traumatic event for the young mutant, leaving her with an intense claustrophobia that would plague her throughout her entire adult life. Even as a member of the X-Men, the idea of being buried alive would remain her greatest fear, and would stand as one of her very few weaknesses, causing her to be paralyzed in horror even in the heat of battle. Eventually, after working through it, the fear would become less intense, but she still definitely prefers being out in the open. Before she was a superhero, she was a thief. After fleeing from the site of her parents' deaths, and presumably being thought dead herself in the carnage that followed the crash, Aurora found herself homeless on the streets. Fortunately, for certain definitions of fortunate, she was taken in by someone who not only gave her a home, but taught her a skilled trade that would provide for her in the present and come in handy in her future career as a superpowered adventurer. Unfortunately, that person was Ahmed El-Gibar, and the trade in question was thievery. Ahmed was essentially Cairo's equivalent of Fagin from Oliver Twist, a thief who employed an army of pickpocketing urchins to gather up ill-gotten goods, primarily pilfered from Cairo's many tourists. Storm, whose brilliant mind was already on display even at a young age, was a natural, and she took to the trade so quickly that she soon became one of Ahmed's most skilled protégés. Even once she left the life of petty crime that marked her youth behind, she continued to use those experiences. For example, her costume is often portrayed as having a hidden set of lockpicks tools that are especially useful for someone whose particular distaste for being trapped. In the kind of coincidence that happens a lot for the X-Men, one of the tourists unlucky enough to have his pocket picked by Aurora was, of course, Charles Xavier. Naturally, with his powers, she didn't get away with this one. Mind readers are, after all, pretty difficult to trick. But despite the fact that he immediately recognized her as a mutant, Xavier didn't offer to take her in and train her to be part of his first class of X-Men. Instead, he was distracted by Cairo's reigning criminal kingpin, Ahmad Farouk, who was serving as a human host for the sinister villain called the Shadow King, one of Marvel's scariest villains. Both Xavier and the Shadow King took notice of Aurora at this time, with the Shadow King marking her as a potential victim and tool for future evil, and Xavier filing her away as a potential recruit. Next, let's talk about the romance between Black Panther and Storm. So, after spending years as a thief on the streets of Cairo, Aurora decided to leave the city, feeling what's usually described in the comics as an irresistible urge to wander south in search of her mother's homeland. The trip took her across the Sahara Desert, and while she didn't initially find a new home, she did find someone else who was exploring the world for the first time. His name was T'Challa, and as you may already know, he would grow up to become the Black Panther. Before he could take up the Black Panther identity and become a king, though, he had to go through a rite of passage, doing his own bit of wandering outside Wakanda as a teenager. While he was doing that, he stumbled across a young girl who was being kidnapped, and after he rescued her, she turned the tables, rescuing him by using her brand new mutant abilities to control the weather. Over the next few weeks, Aurora and T'Challa would quickly fall in love and begin the kind of passionate romance that only two superpowered teenagers with zero parental supervision can have. Sadly, it didn't last. While their feelings for each other were still very strong, T'Challa's duty to Wakanda came first, and he eventually had to return to his homeland alone. This wouldn't be the last time they encountered each other, though, and it definitely wouldn't be the end of their romance. Let's talk about that time that she was a goddess. After her brief adventures with the future Black Panther, Aurora would finally make it to her mother's home in Kenya, where she was taken in by a woman named Annette. Annette would develop a very close bond with the young mutant, and she would regard her as a daughter until she died. Everyone else in their village, however, regarded Aurora as something very different, a literal goddess. It's not hard to imagine why. By this point, Aurora's powers had fully manifested, and even without any training, her innate control over the weather was a staggering sight to behold. Perhaps surprisingly, worshipping a teenager as a god actually worked out pretty well for everyone involved. Even though Aurora came to believe it herself, she used her powers benevolently, helping out not just the group that had taken her in, but the entire surrounding area. Eventually, of course, someone came along to tell her differently. Charles Xavier, having lost his original students after sending them on a mission to the living island of Krakoa, and having secretly lost a second team that he sent after them, which he wouldn't find out about until 2006, was putting together a new group of mutants for a rescue mission. Thanks to plenty of people talking about the living goddess who's controlling the weather, he didn't have any trouble tracking down the kid he'd met in Cairo all those years ago. He informed her that she wasn't, in fact, a goddess, rude, but a mutant, and that her powers could be better used by blowing up giant purple robots with lightning bolts. Shockingly, Aurora agreed, and she took the codename Storm as a member of the all-new X-Men. While she initially had a little bit of difficulty fitting in with the other X-Men, largely due to the fact that she kept walking around without any clothes on, Storm quickly acclimated to a life of superheroics as the most powerful member of the team. In fact, after Cyclops left the X-Men, and after Jean Grey was executed on the moon for the crime of planetary genocide, you know, X-Men stuff, Storm was named the leader, without any argument from the rest of the team. Sadly, Storm's initial tenure as leader was marked largely by stories about various supervillains having a crush on her, notably including Doctor Doom and Dracula. Yes, Dracula. And Aurora having to rebuke their unwanted affections. Doom, as you might expect, didn't respond well to this, and he tried to control Storm by trapping her in her own body via turning her into living chrome, which triggered her claustrophobia to the point that she conjured up a hurricane that nearly wiped Latveria off the map. Dracula didn't fare much better in the romance department, but he did succeed in briefly turning Storm into a vampire in an attempt to make her his latest bride. The curse was broken by Kitty Pryde, but it did lead to stories of another reality where Storm went full Twilight on everyone, taking the admittedly over-the-top but still pretty awesome new name of Bloodstorm. Beyond those incidents, and an unfortunate tendency towards stories where she lost her powers for some reason, Storm time as a leader of the X-Men featured plenty of character development that forced her into one of the most competent and respected leaders in the Marvel Universe. In fact, she retained leadership of the team when Cyclops returned, and years later she managed to defeat him in battle to determine who would lead, all while she didn't have her powers. Pretty impressive by any measure. Storm's natural talent for leadership didn't end with the X-Men. In Uncanny X-Men number 169, Kitty Pryde, the young mutant that Storm had formed a sisterly bond with, to the point of her love for Kitty was what allowed her to just stop being a vampire, was kidnapped. The culprits were the Morlocks, a group of mutants who, in contrast to the X-Men, who are ridiculously attractive even when they're covered in blue fur, had mutations that left them shunned by society. Like the H.G. Wells characters that inspired them, the Morlocks lived underground, specifically in the sewers of New York City. But unlike New York City's other most famous sewer dwellers, they were less interested in pizza than in kidnapping 13-year-olds and forcing them into marriage, which is what they wanted with Kitty. Storm and the rest of the X-Men were understandably creeped out by that and decided to put an end to it. But fighting the Morlocks on their home turf proved to be a little more difficult than they expected, and the team was captured. In order to save Kitty and the rest of the X-Men, Storm had to challenge Callisto, leader of the Morlocks, on the villain's own terms. The result was a no-power switchblade street fight to the death, with Storm suffering from the effects of plague, a Morlock with the power to infect her victims with debilitating disease. What Callisto didn't know, of course, was that before she was an X-Men, Aurora spent years on the streets, and she was way better at knife fighting than your average superhero. The look on Callisto's face when Storm effortlessly catches the switchblade that she tosses to her, drawn in Uncanny X-Men number 170 by Paul Smith, is one of the best depictions in the history of comic books of someone realizing that they are just messed up real bad. During the fight, Storm used her cape to tie up Callisto's arm, a nice bit of fighting dirty, and then shanked her right through the ribs. After puncturing a lung, Storm left Callisto to die on the filthy sewer floor, while she walked away in stone-cold silence. It gave Storm the respect of the Morlocks, and Callisto, who narrowly survived thanks to some superpowered healing, but more importantly, it served as a reminder that Storm wasn't someone to be messed with. Now let's talk about that time that she was a goddess again. Though Storm's tendency to have her powers taken away was certainly an unfortunate one, but to be entirely fair to longtime X-Men writer Chris Claremont, it's at least a little understandable when you consider it from a storytelling aspect. It's very difficult to create tension and danger if your story features someone who has godlike weather control powers, knife murder skills, and willpower so intense that she can just stop being a vampire sometimes. The bright side, though, is that Storm being temporarily depowered actually led to a few of her most iconic moments. One, of course, was beating up a fully powered Cyclops to take leadership of the X-Men. The other is when she briefly became the Goddess of Thunder, complete with a magic Asgardian hammer. As you might expect, this was all part of a plot by, who else? Loki, who was once again attempting to embarrass and or murder Thor. After kidnapping a depowered Storm while she was hanging out with the New Mutants, Loki created a magic hammer named Stormcaster and gave it to Aurora. Like Storm's Mjolnir, Stormcaster allowed Storm to transform into an armored Asgardian form, and it not only restored her ability to control the weather, but Stormcaster granted her all of Thor's other considerable abilities as well. While Storm was briefly tempted to abandon Earth and re-embrace godhood, potentially ruling over Asgard alongside Loki, Storm realized that the guy was so evil that his very existence prompted the Avengers to get together and involved. She destroyed Stormcaster with its own power, but the Hammer story wasn't quite over. Like many elements of Marvel's take on Norse mythology, Stormcaster seemed to be bound to a cycle of death and rebirth. It returned and was destroyed again on multiple occasions, each time granting Storm thunderous powers on top of her own. Now let's talk about Storm's relationship with Black Panther. So, years after they first fell in love on their respective journeys of self-discovery, Storm and T'Challa of Wakanda would find each other again thanks to their prominence in the small and extremely coincidental world of superheroes. This time, though, things were different. Despite having far more intense duties as adults than they ever had as teens, including ruling over one of the Marvel Universe's most powerful nations, in T'Challa's case, the two heroes were far more in control of their lives, and they weren't willing to let circumstances pull them apart. After a whirlwind romance that took place against the backdrop of the Civil War event, a conflict that led Captain America and Iron Man to be shockingly terrible wedding guests, Storm and Black Panther were married in what Marvel billed as the wedding of the century. With that, and a quick journey to another plane of existence where she got the official approval of Bast, the Panther God, Storm became the Queen of Wakanda. According to Professor Xavier himself, this made her the most important mutant alive, as she was a beloved world-renowned celebrity who was ruling a major nation alongside her husband. The marriage initially went pretty well, with Marvel's first couple serving as both Avengers and members on a fill-in roster for the Fantastic Four, while Reed and Sue Richards were off having marriage problems in another dimension. Storm was even able to continue with her duties as an X-Men, with their international status lending a legitimacy to the team that they'd never really had before. Alas, some things are never meant to last, especially where superhero marriages are concerned. After a conflict between the Avengers and the X-Men in 2012's appropriately titled Avengers vs. X-Men, Storm and T'Challa found themselves on opposite sides of a conflict centered on the Phoenix. At one point, the Black Panther named the X-Men as state enemies of Wakanda, which didn't sit well with Storm. This caused a schism between the two, and their marriage was annulled, freeing Storm to rejoin her original team. She wasn't done with Wakanda, though, or with the job of ruling over a nation. While T'Challa was otherwise occupied dealing with the time-traveling future version of himself that had conquered most of outer space, comics stuff, Storm returned to Wakanda to help the people, among whom she was still beloved enough to occasionally be worshipped as a goddess, again. This eventually led her to reconcile things with T'Challa, and while their marriage and romantic relationship was still over, they parted on good terms this time. After the X-Men formed their own separatist nation on the mutant island of Krakoa, which, if you were paying attention on above, had its first appearance in the same story that Storm herself did, Storm was made a member of the Krakoa's ruling body, the Quiet Council. The council was made up of 12 mutants divided into 4 factions, named for their seasons. Storm was part of Summer, alongside Jean Grey and Nightcrawler, and she had great success with chartering the laws of their new nation, which is both impressive and surprising when you consider that the council also featured Mr. Sinister and Apocalypse.